If you've been a part of the YMYW family for an episode or 12, you know that Joe and Big Al don't just want your financial details when you send us your money questions. To really be able to visualize your situation, they want to know what you're doing when you watch or listen. Are you in your car? What do you drive? Are you walking your dog? What kind of dog? And if you are drinking, of course, what is your drink of choice? And for a while now, the YMYW audience has really been getting into the old fashions, bourbon and whiskey. Today on Your Money, Your Wealth, we're going to find out how to put your money where your mouth is. Our special guest is Jeremy Kasler, the founder and CEO of CaskX, making investing in whiskey more accessible and transparent for investors. I'm executive producer Andy Lash with the hosts of Your Money, Your Wealth, Joe Anderson, CFP, and Big Al Clopine, CPA. And Jeremy, those watching us on Spotify or on YouTube can see that you've got a wide array of spirits on the shelves behind you. How does somebody go from buying a bottle of their drink of choice to investing in barrels? Walk us through the steps.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, firstly, most of our investors are whiskey lovers. So, of course, they love the idea of marrying their love of whiskey and, of course, their love of hopefully making money. So, of course, we connect with interested parties. We explain how the process works, the dynamics of investing into something that's tangible, that's real. So we're not selling bottles of whiskey, but we're selling casks of new make whiskey, which, as the name suggests, has just been filled. They just pour the liquid in. And we include 8 years of storage and insurance and taxes within the price as well. So we sit down, we talk to them about why it's a safe bet, if you like. We're not so much focused on the whiskies that they prefer to drink. It's more, we'll recommend the whiskies that we believe have good potential for growth.
Interesting.
Yeah, I see a little bottle of Pappy Van Winkle behind you. So does that have any opportunity for growth?
Well, yeah, price has gone up, tremendously in the bottle market as well. I think a bottle sold for about $50,000 just recently, but that's indicative of the market as a whole. I think initially the idea of whiskey investment actually came from Scotland, where people started investing into Scotch 15 or 20 years ago. And almost without fail, people have made money. And whiskey is one of the few asset classes that, regardless of market conditions, it will increase in value, because as it's poured into the barrel day one, it's moonshine. It's very difficult. You know, if you dropped it on the floor, it would, it would make a hole in the floor. Whereas over time, every day, it's improving flavor. It's getting better and better. So after 4, 6, 8 years, it's very different than it was 8 years previously. So it's a very safe asset in that sense. And you know that if market conditions stay the same or hopefully improve, then the asset will increase in value.
So, Jeremy, the whiskey gets put into casks or barrels, I guess is kind of how I think about whiskey or anything for that matter. And then over time it ages, it tastes better. But how does this work for an investor? Do they buy a barrel? Do they buy a fractional interest in a bunch of barrels, or they buy a bunch of barrels? How does this work?
Sure. So the investor would normally buy a minimum of 24 barrels. Most of our investors come in around about the sort of 100-barrel mark, if you like, but can come in at a minimum. Like I say, we manage the investment for that period of 8 years. So it's a very simple process. We, of course, give the advice just as if you were buying a stock or a share. We look at the people behind the whiskey itself. Do we believe that they're good people, going to grow the business, going to create a good product? Just like you buy a stock or a share, you look at the CEO, if you like. And then the investor, of course, makes that decision. Okay, I'd like to invest into this particular bourbon or whiskey. And we then do all the paperwork. Everything goes into the investor's name. It's all very secure, very safe. And we provide the opportunity for the investor to travel to maybe Kentucky or Tennessee, meet the people behind these amazing whiskies, stir the corn, kind of be part of the process. So in that sense, it's not unique, but it's unusual to be able to meet the people of the companies that you're investing in that sense. So that our clients do get a lot from it.
So what happens at the end of 8 years?
End of 8 years, and it could be sooner, but we include 8 years to give ourselves a good buffer. We look to exit the client, of course. Most bourbons that you'll see on the shelves, they don't actually make the bourbon. Most bourbons actually, or most brands, buy the barrels in and bottle them the next day because they don't want to have to wait 8 years to get paid. So there's a huge market out there for good aged bourbon from good distilleries. That there's very little bourbon that gets to past 4 or 6 years old. So when it gets to that age, it's rare, it's desirable, it tastes great, and there's a huge market for it.
I got a question. So let's say I'm Knob Creek or whatever bourbon company that is, with the barrels that you guys are putting together. So are they funding that up front, or they're getting the invest? Explain to me how kind of the genesis of how this stuff works. Or are the barrels made and then these big companies buy it and then they put in their special ingredients at the end as they bottle it?
Generally speaking, so for a distillery, there's two types of distilleries. There's those distilleries that make their own whiskey, have the resources to be able to age it for 6, 8, 10 years. Generally, they're the $1 billion companies as opposed to the less big operators. Then there's contract distillers who exclusively make barrels for other people to put into bottles later down the line. So we deal with a mixture of the two. It's a good way for the distillery to very quickly monetize their work. So in some cases, we'll deal with a brand, say Bardstown is a fantastic brand. They make unbelievable whiskey. They sell all over the world, but they also sell us barrels as well because it helps to keep the lights on. They can get paid straight away. They're not waiting 8 years to monetize. So it's kind of a win-win. But when the barrels are sold to the brands, they would generally make a blend. It's not a case of, right, with some, say, scotches where they'll take one barrel and bottle it and release it. So what they're looking for is consistency over a long period of time from the same distillery. And that's where we also come in because we place orders every quarter. So for a brand that needs consistency over a number of years, they'll buy some from this quarter, some from that quarter, so on and so forth.
Let's say I buy 100 barrels.
Sure. So
and then it's going to age 8 years. And so each year I get a statement, and who marks the price, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the entry level is $2,400 a barrel initially. And like I said, that includes all the storage, insurance and taxes, so on and so forth.
And then can I just take the barrel and bring it home and drink it too?
Yeah, well, I guess so.
I want to wait a couple of years.
I mean, you can make your own brand. You can bottle it yourself and take the bottles back home with you, should you wish. But you'd have to drink a lot of whiskey or have a lot of friends, I would say. Yeah, so we give, of course, regular updates. We give regular valuations. We're looking at the market as a broker. When's the best time to trade a client out? We would suggest, it's not a short-term hold. It's not something you buy today and sell in 6 months or sell in a year. You're not going to make money that way. But certainly we say, look, hold for at least 4 years. If you can hold for 6 years or 8 years, even better. And if you can do that, you'll no doubt see very good returns.
So that barrel that was maybe $2,400, 6 to 8 years down the road, what might be the price, or what have you seen in the past?
Yeah, we've seen historically after around about 4 years that prices will double around there. And if we get into 8 years, you could say somewhere around about the $7,000 to $8,000 mark.
Right. Okay.
So what is the liquidity of the investment? Let's say I buy the barrels and 6 months later, I do need the cash. Is there a lockup period, or how liquid is the investment?
Yeah, so we are governed by the SEC, so it's considered a security. So the rules are very strict. First of all, we can only deal with accredited investors in the first place, and you cannot sell the asset within 1 year. So you have to hold for a minimum of 12 months. Now, after that, of course, you've got the right to sell it. It would be a mistake because you're not going to make any money after 12 months because nobody wants to drink 1-year-old bourbon.
Oh, you do,
I don't know.
Joe would.
Maybe some of my relatives.
Well, maybe some people do, but no, not around here, they don't. And again, the market is shifting. Previously, the bourbon market, a bit like the Scotch market, was very generic. It was just a few brands and there wasn't a great deal of choice. Now, just like the Scotch market, people are more and more looking at age statements. So previously, you never saw an age on a bourbon bottle, or very rarely. Now, it's one of the first things people look for. And everybody knows that the older it is, generally, the better it is. So if we're looking at a longer hold, in these conditions, we're going to make more money. So I think it's important that we also help the distilleries to present their bourbons in a good way, because all our clients hold them for 8 years. So when someone gets to drink them, they'll all be 8 years old and they'll all be delicious.
I have a question. We've got an advisor at Pure who actually is really into Japanese whiskey. Is international product something that's on the horizon for you?
It is. I mean, we sell Scotch. We like to focus on bourbon where we can because, of course, we're in America, and American products in America for American people. But we've looked at Japanese whiskey. It can be horrendously expensive. I've seen like 1 barrel of new make Japanese whiskey sell for $125,000.
Wow.
It kind of beggars belief. So we don't feel this value in that particular market, but in Scotch, yes. In Irish whiskey, of course. We're even looking at Indian whiskey, believe it or not. India drinks 48% of the world's whiskey every year. It's the world's biggest market comfortably. And they've started making some really good whiskies there. So that's a market we're very interested in.
So do you send your clients to go visit the places in India or in Scotland or Ireland?
Not India yet. To be frank, we haven't done any business there as yet. But yeah, we send our clients all the time to Kentucky, Tennessee, and a few have been to Scotland so far. But yeah, that's one of the great parts of the business where, we talk a lot about whiskey, and we've got this beautiful whiskey in the background here, but you'll notice all the bottles are full. We're not sat here drinking whiskey every day for obvious reasons. So when our clients, having invested into whiskey and talked about it for weeks or months, they actually go to the distillery and they see the barrels, and it's quite a real moment. You can really see the effect it has, that it's real. And, of course, like I said, they get to stir the corn and meet these really great people. And as we know, people in Kentucky and Tennessee are generally very welcoming, very nice people.
How did you end up getting into this?
Well, previously I was based in Hong Kong, and I was in the arts investment business. So I was selling Chinese contemporary art for investment. Prior to that, I was in the wine business, selling wine for investment. So very different products, but very similar business model. And prior to me selling the business in Hong Kong, we started getting inquiries for whiskey. And I'm like, okay, we heard it once. Okay, heard it twice, heard it 3 times. Right, we need to look at this. And when we did our due diligence, we saw that there were a number of companies in the UK mainly that were offering Scotch whiskey barrels for investment. So we looked at the business. We thought, yeah, this is something we can do. We've got lots of experience in this type of industry. And we looked at where we wanted to base ourselves. And Los Angeles looked and sounded very appealing, I'll be honest, after coming from Hong Kong. And it was a new market because effectively when we arrived here, nobody was selling whiskey barrels for investment. It's kind of unusual. Normally, all the great ideas start here and move overseas. But we kind of helped to reverse the process.
Hey, I've got a question. With any investment where there's rewards, there's also risks. And it seems to me one of the risks would be lack of liquidity. So you've got to hold the investment long term. certainly would be what the market would bear at the time of sale. But are there other risks too? Like, do barrels ever go bad,
Yeah,
or are there
rotten barrel.
other kinds of risks?
And what happens if the interest wanes in the whiskey market?
Yeah, no, that's a valid point. And when we first opened, because we're a security, I had to sit down and write 15 pages of risk factors. And he was saying, no, we need more. And I said, I can't think of any more. So I'm pretty good on risk factors. The distillery can blow up. I mean, there's your obvious risk that, it's a volatile substance, and, it's great that it's tangible, but the tangible carries risks as well. We are fully insured, although we're not fully insured at the current values. So we're insured at replacement values, because it would just be too difficult to do that. So if 4 years down the line, the distillery blows up, then we'll replace all the barrels, and we'll start the 8 years again. In terms of, there can be leakages in barrels, so on and so forth. It's unusual, to be honest, but it can happen. Again, if we see or we find a leakage in any of the barrels, as an act of good faith, we'll replace them, not even through the insurance. The market itself, of course, although it does appreciate as it ages, it is affected by market conditions. There's been a tremendous bourbon boom over the last 5-10 years or so. That doesn't look like stopping anytime soon. We've got, for example, getting back to India, they're talking about halving the tariffs on whiskey into India. And there's more and more people drinking bourbon all over the world. On my travels, the first thing I look at is the bourbon list. And, it used to be Jack Daniels and Jim Beam, and that was it. Now, in many places, it runs into pages in places like, Sweden, England, Asia. There's bourbon bars opening up. So the market is booming internationally, and that's really important, because there's 350 million people in the US, but of course there's 8 billion people overseas, and we're seeing more and more people drinking bourbon and enjoying it as their drink of choice.
So that being the case, with all those bottles behind you, if you were going to have a drink of choice, what would it be for you?
I mean, I love Pappy Van Winkle, which is
there it is.
I really enjoy Bardstown. I think it's, I love being in the business. When you love the people behind the story as well, and you go and meet and see the wonderful operation, you tend to enjoy the bourbon more as well. So I guess it's because we're talking about it all day, and we're so enamored with the business itself that, even the bourbon tastes better.
Very good. Jeremy, where do people find you if they want to invest in some bourbon?
Yeah, they can come to caskx.com.
That's Jeremy Kasler from CaskX. That's CaskX.com. Thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Lovely. Thank you for having me.
To find out how alternative investments like bourbon or whiskey might fit into your overall financial plans, click or tap Ask Joe and Big Al on air in the episode description, and they'll spitball on it for you. But to really make the most of your money and your wealth in retirement, you definitely need more than a spitball. Schedule a free financial assessment with the experienced professionals on Joe and Big Al's team at Pure. It is free, and they'll go deep to help you craft a financial plan that's especially customized to meet your tolerance for risk, your needs, and your goals in retirement. Click or tap the free assessment link in the episode description, or call 888-994-6257 to book yours. You can meet online or in person. Pure Financial Advisors has 10 locations around the country now, with more on the way. Your Money, Your Wealth is presented by Pure Financial Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This show does not intend to provide personalized investment advice through this podcast and does not represent that the securities or services discussed are suitable for any investor. As rules and regulations change, podcast content may become outdated. Investors are advised not to rely on any information contained in the podcast in the process of making a full and informed investment decision.